It is the year 586 before Christ. A Babylonian soldier walks into the Holy of Holies, the most sacred room in the ancient world. He kicks open the doors. He sets the curtain on fire. He searches the room for the Ark of the Covenant. And it isn't there. Nobody knows where it went. Nobody has ever known. As the Temple of Solomon burns down around him, 1,000 years of Israelite history collapse with it. The people God called his own are being marched to Babylon. The promised land is empty. The kings of David's line are dead or in chains. The prophets are silent. And here is what most people miss. This moment is not random. This moment is the inevitable end of a pattern that began 1,500 years earlier in a garden called Eden. A pattern that repeats in every single era of Old Testament history. A pattern that once you see it, you cannot unsee. The Old Testament is 39 books, 40 different authors, 1,500 years of recorded history, and it reads like a chaos of stories. Patriarchs and pharaohs, judges and kings, prophets, wars, miracles, exiles. Most people read it once, get lost, and quit. But there is a spine. There are 7 eras, and at the end of every single era, the same thing happens. The same question hangs in the air. The same answer never comes. This is the Old Testament. Once you see the pattern, every page makes sense. Let's walk through them. Era 1, Creation and Fall. Genesis chapters 1 through 11. It starts in a garden. A man, a woman, a creator, and an unbroken relationship. 3 things are given: dominion over the earth, provision from every tree, face-to-face access to God in the cool of the day. One thing is asked: trust me on one boundary. The boundary gets crossed. The relationship tears. The man and the woman are put outside the garden, and an angel with a flaming sword is stationed at the entrance so they cannot go back. And here, in the very first era, the pattern begins. Adam and Eve have 2 sons, Cain and Abel. Cain murders Abel. The first death recorded outside Eden is one human killing another. By Genesis chapter 6, the entire human race has filled the earth with violence. So God wipes it clean with a flood and starts over with Noah. One righteous family, one ark, one reset. Noah steps off the ark onto wet ground. He builds an altar. God promises never again to flood the earth. New beginning. And then Noah gets drunk and curses his own grandson. Within a few generations, humanity is back in rebellion. They build a tower at Babel. They want to make a name for themselves. They want to climb up to God on their own terms. So God scatters them, confuses their language, and the world becomes nations. Era 1 ends with humanity scattered across the earth, spoken in 70 languages, cut off from the garden, cut off from each other, cut off from God. The first era ends with a question: will anyone come down to where we are? Will anyone fix what we broke? The answer does not come yet, but God is about to make a phone call to one man in a city called Ur. Era 2, the patriarchs, Genesis chapters 12 through 50. In a city called Ur in modern-day Iraq, around 2000 BC, God speaks to a 75-year-old man named Abram. Leave your country. Leave your family. Go to a land I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. Through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. This is God's first answer to the question Era 1 ended with. The answer is going to be a family. One family will become one nation, and through that nation, God will bring blessing back to a world that lost it. Abram becomes Abraham. Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. The 12 tribes of Israel begin. The promise is alive. The family is multiplying. God is moving. And then the story collapses. A famine drives Jacob's family to Egypt. Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, has somehow risen to second in command of Egypt. He saves his family from starvation. The book of Genesis closes with Joseph's bones in a coffin in Egypt. The family is fed, they are safe, they are alive. But here is the problem. They are not in the promised land. They are in Egypt. And one chapter later, in the opening verses of Exodus, a new Pharaoh comes to power who does not know Joseph. And the descendants of Abraham, the family of promise, the chosen ones, the carriers of the blessing, are slaves. Era 2 ends the same way Era 1 ended. With a question: did God forget? Is the promise dead? Is anyone coming to get us out? Era 3, Exodus and wilderness. The book of Exodus through the book of Deuteronomy. The answer to Era 2's question arrives in an unexpected way. A baby in a basket floating down the Nile. Adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. Raised in the palace of the people enslaving his own. His name is Moses. 40 years in Pharaoh's house. 40 years in the wilderness as a fugitive. Then a burning bush, a divine commissioning, and Moses returns to Egypt at age 80 with a staff and a sentence. Let my people go. 10 plagues. The Red Sea splits. The slaves walk out as a free nation. Moses leads them to Mount Sinai, where God gives them the law, the tabernacle, the priesthood, a whole system for a holy God to live in the middle of an unholy people. This is the high point of Era 3. God is closer to humanity than he has been since Eden. He moves into a tent in the middle of the camp. There is a pillar of fire by night. Manna falls every morning. The promised land is in sight. And then the people grumble. They build a golden calf. They refuse to enter the land. So 40 years pass in the wilderness. An entire generation dies. And Moses, the man God used to free them, is told he cannot enter the promised land either. Deuteronomy ends with Moses standing on a mountain, looking across the Jordan River at the land he will never set foot in. He dies on that mountain. And Joshua, his successor, leads the people in. Era 3 ends the same way as the others, with a question. The deliverer cannot finish what he started. The man God used most powerfully to lead the people out dies before leading them home. So who can? Era 4. Conquest and Judges. Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. Joshua leads the tribes across the Jordan. Walls fall at Jericho. Cities are taken. The promised land is being conquered. For a moment, the promise is being fulfilled. But Joshua's conquest is incomplete. Tribes leave Canaanite cities standing. Compromises are made. And when Joshua dies, the next generation is born into a land that is supposed to be God's, but is full of foreign gods and foreign altars. What follows is one of the saddest books in the Bible. Judges. The pattern in Judges is so consistent it has a name. The cycle. Israel rebels. God lets enemies oppress them. The people cry out. God raises up a judge to deliver them. The judge dies. Israel rebels. The cycle starts over. Othniel, Ehud, Deborah, Gideon, Samson. Some are heroic. Some are deeply flawed. None of them last. The book of Judges ends with one sentence that captures the entire era. There was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Era 4 does not end with a war or a crisis. It ends with a slow rot. The people are in the land. They have judges. They have priests. They have prophets sometimes. But they have no central authority. No anointed one. No king. Era 4 ends with a question. We need a king. Will God give us one? And if he does, will the king be enough? Era 5. The United Kingdom. 1 Samuel through 1 Kings chapter 11. The people demand a king like the nations around them. God gives them Saul. Tall, handsome, a warrior, and a disaster. Saul disobeys God, loses the crown, and ends his life on a battlefield, falling on his own sword. Then comes David, a shepherd boy from Bethlehem, the smallest tribe, the youngest son. He kills a giant with a sling. He plays the harp for a king who tries to murder him. He spends years in caves with outlaws, and eventually he is crowned king of Israel. He captures Jerusalem and makes it the capital. He brings the ark there. He plans a temple, and God makes him a covenant. 2 Samuel chapter 7. A son of David will sit on the throne, and his kingdom will have no end. For a moment, the promise is glowing. The man after God's own heart is on the throne. And then David sleeps with another man's wife, has the husband killed, watches his own family tear itself apart. His son rebels. The kingdom almost falls. David dies broken. His son Solomon takes over. Solomon builds the temple. Wisdom flows like a river. Israel reaches its greatest extent. Foreign rulers come from every direction to hear him. The promised land is finally what it was supposed to be. And then Solomon takes 700 wives. He builds altars to their foreign gods. He sets fire to everything his father worked for. 1 Kings chapter 11. Solomon dies, and the kingdom dies with him. Era 5 ends the same way. The greatest kings the world has seen, even they could not save Israel. We need someone better. Era 6. The divided kingdom and the exile. 1 Kings chapter 12 through 2 Kings chapter 25. The kingdom splits in half. 10 tribes in the north, 2 in the south. 200 years of parallel kings. Some good, mostly bad. Both sides drift further from God. In the north, 19 kings, every single one of them described as evil. Jeroboam builds 2 golden calves so the people will not travel south to Jerusalem. Ahab and Jezebel push the kingdom into full Baal worship. Elijah confronts 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. Fire falls from heaven. The prophets are killed, and the people still drift. In the south, 20 kings. A few are righteous, Hezekiah, Josiah, but most are not. The temple in Jerusalem is sometimes filled with idols. Sometimes the priests cannot even find a copy of the law. God sends prophet after prophet: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Amos, Hosea, Micah. The same warning every time. Turn back. The judgment is coming. The northern kingdom falls first. 722 BC. Assyria comes through and carries away the 10 tribes. They never return. They become the lost tribes of Israel. The southern kingdom holds on for another 136 years. Then 586 BC. Babylon comes. Walls breach. Temple burns. The ark vanishes. The king's sons are killed in front of him. His eyes are put out. He is led to Babylon in chains. The last image of the era is a blind, broken king walking the road into exile. Era 6 ends in ashes. The chosen people are scattered. The promised land is empty. The promised line is broken. The promise itself is dying. Era 6 ends with the loudest question yet. Where is God now? Era 7. Return and silence. Ezra, Nehemiah, the post-exile prophets, and 400 years of nothing. 70 years of exile end when a Persian king named Cyrus issues a decree. The Jews can go home. A small remnant returns, around 50,000 people. They rebuild the altar. They lay the foundation of a new temple. And when the foundation is laid, 2 sounds rise from the crowd at the same time. Some shout for joy. The old men weep, because they remember the first temple, the one Solomon built, and the new one is so much smaller. The walls of Jerusalem are rebuilt under Nehemiah. The law is read aloud under Ezra. The people repent. The festivals begin again. There's a flicker of hope. And then God sends 3 final prophets: Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. And then the writing stops. Malachi ends with a single promise. God says, "Behold, I will send Elijah the prophet before that great and dreadful day." Then the pen goes down. The Old Testament is over, and then comes silence. 400 years of silence. No prophet speaks. No new scripture is written. The temple stands, but the Holy of Holies is empty. The descendants of David are no longer kings. They are carpenters. They are fishermen. They are nobody. The Greeks come, then the Romans. Israel becomes an occupied province on the edge of an empire. Everything that began with Abraham 4 millennia earlier looks like it has ended in failure. And Era 7 does not end with a question. Era 7 ends with silence. Because every question the previous 6 eras asked is now hanging in the air at once, and nobody is answering. Now stand back. Look at the 7 eras together. Era 1, creation and fall, ends with humanity scattered. Question: will anyone come down? Era 2, the patriarchs, ends with God's chosen family enslaved in Egypt. Question: did God forget? Era 3, Exodus and wilderness, ends with Moses dying outside the promised land. Question: the deliverer cannot finish. Who can? Era 4, conquest and judges, ends with rotting compromise. Question: we need a king. Era 5, the United Kingdom, ends with Solomon's apostasy and a divided nation. Question: even the best human kings cannot save us. Era 6, the divided kingdom, ends in ashes and exile. Question: where is God now? Era 7, return and silence, ends with no question at all. Just 400 years of nothing. Here is what nobody connects. The Old Testament is not a chaos of stories. It is one question, asked 7 different ways, and answered every time with the same partial, broken, dying answer. A rescuer rises. The rescuer fails. A king is given. The king fails. A nation is chosen. The nation fails. Every era introduces a hope. Every era ends with the hope crumbling. Every era leaves the audience waiting for a final figure who will actually finish what the previous one couldn't. Adam fails. We need a new Adam. Noah fails. We need a better Noah. Abraham dies. We need a greater Abraham. Moses cannot enter the land. We need a deliverer who finishes. Joshua cannot conquer the heart. We need a Joshua who saves the soul. The judges cannot last. We need a judge who reigns forever. David sins. We need a David without sin. Solomon falls. We need a Solomon who never strays. The kings fail. We need a king above the kings. The prophets are killed. We need the Word made flesh. The priests die. We need a priest who lives forever. The temple burns. We need a temple no army can destroy. The exile separates. We need a covenant that brings the lost home. The silence stretches. We need someone to speak. 7 eras, 1,500 years, 40 authors, 39 books, 1 pattern, 1 unanswered question. And at the end of Era 7, after 400 years of silence, a young woman in a small village called Nazareth hears an angel say a single sentence: "You will conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus." The Old Testament ends with silence. The New Testament begins with a baby's cry. And every pattern, every failed rescuer, every collapsing king, every unfinished story, every era that ended with the same unanswered question, all of it lands at the feet of one person. The Old Testament is not 39 books. It is the longest setup for a single sentence ever written. And the sentence is His name. If this video helped you see the Old Testament in a way you have not seen it before, subscribe to the Simple Gospel. Share this with someone who has ever quit the Old Testament halfway through, and let me know in the comments. Which era surprised you the most? We read every one of them. God bless you, and we will see you in the next one.